Okay, so how do you accelerate the strategic results or business results of a huge company? So, welcome to the Q model, and our primary focus is what we would call enterprise transformation or accelerating the business results of a large enterprise. So, if we're dealing with this topic, there's always three things we're going to have to deal with. So, one is strategy. And look, every company already has a strategy. In fact, the big problem is that most companies have too much strategy, which is to say that there are many competing ideas that are attacking each other or competing for a limited amount of time and energy. So the interesting thing is working with big companies, one of the very first things we always do is ask, is your executive team aligned on the strategy? And of course, the answer is always yes. We are 100% aligned. But if you take the executives away individually and ask them what they think the best solution is, they always give you a whole bunch of conflicting ideas. And so, look, at a really basic human level, you want to be considered to be a team player. And so, you always say, yes, we are an aligned team. But on the other side, every executive is an ambitious career professional, and they all have their own need for achievement or recognition. And so they're competing to have their idea be the best idea. So the result of this is kind of a strategic logjam. You end up with many ideas competing for a limited resource, and that limited resource is always time or focus. There's a limited amount of strategic focus in any organization. And so unless you can align the team on a single strategy, you end up with a strategic logjam, or I like to call it strategic confusion. So, at the very heart of the Q process is strategic alignment. And this process is actually much easier than you might imagine. It's a matter of generating an environment in which the leaders or executives have a structured dialogue and work through the main strategies until they align on a primary strategy. And this is something that can happen very quickly in an organization, but most organizations don't have the capability or resources to work their way through the strategic confusion. So, one of I think it was my CTO at Blue Focus, he said, one team, one dream. And that was the primary result of the Q Drive process. So getting that strategic alignment is really the top of the Q pyramid. So going down the other side, over here we have implementation or action. Look, nothing is going to happen without action. And so translating that big picture strategy into action sounds really easy to do, but this is where almost every company fails. So the senior executives design a big picture strategy. They kind of hand it or cascade it to the next level of middle managers. And of course, those middle managers are supposed to turn that into some kind of a project and then execute on the project and manage the frontline workers. But this is really where the strategic process tends to break down. So, what's missing here is doing the integration work of actually turning the big picture strategy into some kind of a specific project or set of projects, and setting up an implementation process for each of those projects. And look, this is actually hard work to do, because when you make a significant structural change in an organization, it creates a ripple effect, and that ripple effect has a lot of systemic issues in other parts of the organization. And this is why most organizational transformation projects end up stuck or in a frozen state. So, really the magic tool here is multi-silo teams. So in any organization, when we're working with a big organization, our primary process of setting up a strategic transformation or accelerating an existing um, strategic transformation is designing the right breakthrough projects and getting the right people into those breakthrough project teams. And the magic secret sauce of the entire enterprise transformation system is multi-silo teams. So when you get people from around the organization to come together into a multi-silo team that's attacking one structural project, you break down some of the groupthink barriers that often freeze projects, but you also bring in the resources from around the organization so that people have the capacity to go back to their part of the organization and have the structural conversations necessary in order to actually create that successful implementation of that sub-project. So, we call this strategic implementation. And, strategic implementation is one of the most missing qualities in most organizations today. Everyone sticks up here and they fight over what the top line strategy should be, but this idea of cascade or trickle down of strategy seems to be fundamentally broken in most organizations. Okay, so why do these projects get stuck? So this takes us back to our first corner, which is people, or you could also call that leadership. Unfortunately, leadership is a word that gets used over and over again, and pretty much no one knows what it means anymore. So if you think in terms of people, these are the people who have to execute on or implement this strategic breakthrough project. And I've got some really kind of bad news about people. So if you look at all the organizations in the world, you would find that roughly 87% of the managers in those organizations correspond to what we would call busy and no results. So HBR did a fabulous study on this in 2002 and with 10,000 managers, and they found that basically every 87% of managers fall into that category, which I'm going to slightly redefine based on the 3 rules of low performance. And almost every organization functions on these 3 rules of low performance. So rule number 1, say yes. Your boss is going to come to you with some really insane request, some impossible project or unachievable KPI. And of course, rule number 1, say yes. Don't even think about the implications of it because, look, you have no choice. You must say yes. So rule number 1, say yes. Now, this triggers rule number 2, which is smile. In any organization, you have to pretend to be happy at all times. And so everyone's kind of smiling. And of course, your boss just gave you an impossible project or unachievable KPI. So on the outside, you're smiling and saying yes. And on the inside, you're going, ah. But remember, you never show the outside because that would break rule number 2. Now, rule number 3 is probably the most important rule of all, which is always, always, always look busy. Now, you're going to be running around the company trying to figure out how to achieve this impossible KPI. And look, you have no idea how to produce this result. It seems completely impossible to you. And while you're taking some time to try to figure out some workable solution, in the meantime, you must look busy. So you kind of scurry around. You've got a lot of stuff on your plate. As Bill Gates says, busy is the new stupid. But nonetheless, busy is kind of the third rule of how to survive in any corporation. So everyone adheres to that rule and they always look busy. And if you ask them, hey, how's it going? They say busy, as if busy was a good thing. And so here's the thing. In any organization, at some point, there's going to be a round of layoffs. And, the senior leaders really don't know who's producing results and who's not producing results. So they're just going to look around and they're going to go, looks busy, doesn't look busy, fire. Looks busy, doesn't look busy. You're out of here. Okay, so rule number 3, always look busy. Now, look, this is a little bit of a joke, but you wouldn't find it funny if there wasn't some truth to this joke, because most people operate from this low performance mindset, and it's really encapsulated by these 3 rules. And so let's have a little conversation and ask about the other 13% of leaders. So what does it take to become a leader who can really strategically execute on a challenging project? And this is something that's been researched a lot, and this is really the heart of the entire Q model system. So if you're looking at that quality, you're really getting into the heart of the Q model system. So at the very top is strategy, the ability to cut through the noise and align on a core strategy that you can rally a team around. To translate that strategy into real actionable projects and have an implementation process that you manage over time so that you get short-term action in your team. A Q leader creates more Q leaders. That's the essence of what makes a strong leader, which in turn allows you to take on more or more challenging areas of strategy, which basically completes the cycle and keeps everything moving on track. So moving an organization from a low energy state of confusion to a high energy state of focused strategic execution may seem impossible, but it's something that I personally see over again that we can achieve in about 3 months. Now, look, there's many different organizations in the world, and changing the direction of an ocean liner isn't something you can do in 1 kilometer. So if you're working with a very large organization, it might be impossible. But within that organization, there are always going to be pockets of highly committed people who really want to sink their teeth into a challenging project and execute on that project. And those are the people that go into those strategic projects. So designing that breakthrough system, that accelerated company transformation system, I'm not saying this is something that is easy or trivial, but you have to look at the cost of the alternative, which is business as usual. There's nothing wrong with steering the Titanic straight into the iceberg, and most large organizations will simply cease to exist in a 5 to 10 year time frame. And if you look at this historically, you kind of know this to be true. So the question is are you going to become or drive the transformation of an organization that can become adapted to the needs of the accelerating rate of competition of the world that we live in today? Or are you going to continue on the path of business as usual? So, look, I'm not saying this is easy. In fact, it is always a challenge, and every organizational transformation project has its own unique character, and you have to adjust every model to the needs of the particular situation. But the alternative is to just put your head down and keep going. And you kind of know where that leads. It leads back to the world of low performances, which is where so many people spend most of their life. So look, if you are someone who is committed to building that strong capacity for transforming the results of a company or the results of a team, then I really challenge you to develop the skills and develop that capacity and step up to that big game. So welcome to the world of Q.